Man City away tomorrow. Bring it on. Hang on, Man City. Well, we did beat them in the League Cup that time. I surely can't be the only one who's felt like that this weekend, realising who we've got in the FA Cup. But anything can happen in football, ladies and gentlemen. That old famous saying that gets really annoying when you hear it rammed down your throat. We are one game away from Wembley, although it doesn't really feel like it because we've got Manchester City away. The match previews coming up, Newcastle fans, for the FA Cup quarter-final. So if you're curious, do me a lovely little favour and make sure you stick around for a dollop of black and white banter. Welcome back to Black and White Banter, you lovely jubbly Newcastle fans. I hope all is well. I hope you've had a decent week after pretty much the most awful start imaginable on Monday night down at Stamford Bridge. Whether you're a fan travelling down there or whether you just, like me, luckily were watching at home and you were able to go straight to bed rather than having to travel back, but still felt as angry as I did. For a lot of different reasons after a performance. You can lose a football match, but when you are making a fragile team like Chelsea look better than what I personally think they are, but also not seeing the energy levels and the commitment, which is two words I don't think I've ever really said under Eddie Howe, that was a concern and that was a frustration for me as well. So there's a bit of a hangover there. I hope you've all recovered from that. And what do you need when you've got a hangover? You just need a bit of something to get over it, maybe a nice walk down the beach, maybe a full English breakfast, maybe your mum's favourite shepherd's pie. What does that come in the form of for this Newcastle team? Manchester City away from home in the FA Cup quarter-final. And look, I'm going to speak for most people watching this video when I do not travel, and I am travelling down to the Etihad tomorrow as I'm recording this. That's why I'm in a bit of a different environment for this video, because I'm at my parents', where my Newcastle shirt collection is, because they are luckily looking after War Mags. Otherwise, I was probably not going to be going if the puppy could not be looked after. I'm going down tomorrow, not in expectation, maybe in a little bit of hope, but the main focus for me going into tomorrow's game is that open mind that maybe the freedom could return from some of these players, because the shackles to a degree are off. And I would like to hope our players don't have that mentality. That's for fans to have. Players should always feel like they can compete in any match they walk out the pitch on, in my opinion. They're getting paid enough to. But that being said, Manchester City are the overwhelming favourites, and why would they not be? Quadruple winners, just coming off a really hard-fought point in Liverpool, where I personally think they were very, very lucky, but we'll touch on that game in a second, actually, why that's quite interesting, how we approach this match. And our record at the Etihad, I'll touch on the stats, as I always do, for a bit of stats. That'll come later on. It's a difficult game. From any angle, from any pair of glasses, from spectacles that you have on, it is a very, very difficult game of football. Let's go out. Anything can happen. There's the FA Cup aspect, so things have to be decided. And I think what summarises things for me this week is that in any other universe, Newcastle being 90 minutes from another place at Wembley, from me booking my trains and my hotel, I'd be so excited, I'd be nervous, I'd be talking about it to everyone in the shops, on the phone. My mum and dad would be bored of hearing about it. Because we've got Manchester City, subconsciously, it has not crossed my mind that we might be getting to Wembley tomorrow, that I might be celebrating on the way home, Newcastle returning to Wembley Way just over a year after being there in the cup final. Because it just feels like it's an impossible task, and that's not even me fully believing that it is impossible, but it's just the mentality I think most of us have. So, how should Newcastle set up for what sometimes feels in world football right now like the impossible game? Well, I certainly think Man City have weaknesses. I think that's been proven. Man City have now not kept a clean sheet for quite a long time. They do concede goals. They do have injuries, which we'll touch on in a second. But let's focus on this Newcastle team first. How should we set up? Well, we play, anyone who knows anything about our style of football at Man City, we like to adopt a very similar style of football to Man City. And not as good, of course, before anyone jumps down my throat and says that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying our general principles of set up and style of play. And I'll put the graphic on the screen to show just that. We are very, very similar. We both do not play long passes. We both have quite a high press, and possession in an ideal world for this Newcastle team is also part of what we like to do. Some people might argue going into this game, very similar to Chelsea, which I did not agree with. Our pressing style against Chelsea was working in the first 5 minutes. We could see that. We conceded a freak goal, and everything went downhill from there. And I genuinely believe that fragile Chelsea team was there to be got at if we'd done it in the correct way. And I stand by that statement. Now, going into this Man City game, we cannot be blinded and believe that we are capable of having low block. God, I cannot say them words. Park the bus is what I'm going to stick to. We have not become solid defensively overnight, and that's not going to change. Look at how Sven Botman played on Monday. For me, it's been proven this season, Manchester City struggle against sides who can match them for intensity and really try and get in their faces, with the emphasis being on try. Yes, if you play someone as good as Man City at their own game, will they come out on top? 8 times out of 10, I think they will. 9 times out of 10 in this case against us, because our record down there is so bad we seem to crumble. Yes, they will. But you are looking for that one opportunity where things might not be quite be firing on all cylinders. You get a bit of luck, you take your chances when you get them, and it's a cup match, and anything can happen. Even extra time, even penalties. God, dare I even talk about getting that far in this match. I think we need to come out, first and foremost, let's get the basics sorted, play so much better than we did against Chelsea on Monday. So much better. If our energy levels, which really infuriated me on Monday, are anywhere near what I saw against that really indifferent Chelsea side, we will get battered. Forget about who Man City are missing, we will get battered. I've watched us lose 5-0. I've watched us lose 6-1. I remember, was it Aguero scored 4? I've seen it all. Our record is atrocious at the Etihad. It's almost, it borderlines embarrassing. As good as they are, it does. But that being said, there's been little, and exactly what I said, how Man City will win 9 times out of 10. I can remember us going down to the Etihad in the Carabao. Yes, it was the third round. And yes, Man City played a weaker side, and we did as well. But we have won there. Rolando Aarons, Sissoko. And look at this season. Yes, Manchester City played a weaker side in the Carabao Cup, but so did we. They had all of the ball in the first half. They really took it to us. We dug in. Second half, they couldn't cope with us. We started the game strong. We were on the front foot for most of the match. Things can happen in football. This is not the It's just a very difficult one if we do not get all the basics right. So I am all about Newcastle pressing. And do you know who proved, and yes, it's different scale, do you know who proved how well that can work? Liverpool on Sunday. Liverpool had 12 shots on goal in the second half alone. They could not cope with that intensity. If we try and sit in my opinion, bearing in mind you can't get a draw out of this. Yes, it takes you to extra time, but then you're going up against a better squad with 30 extra minutes. Us to sit in and try and hit them on the counter, yeah, we have a bit of pace, will not work in my opinion. Man City tire you with their passes. I don't even need to share any stats on the screen. Anyone who knows Man City knows it's probably boring for some of their fans. Pass. It is ridiculous when you watch them, how every player's moving. Every player knows the next player's move. It's crazy. We will be outdone if we allow that to just be passed around our box. The way we've been defending, you've got to take that into consideration, and a couple of injuries that we have. We done. We cooked, which seems to be another trendy word on social media right now, which I don't think I'll be saying again. That's how we need to set up. We need to set up to press, but with much more energy. Much more energy. Right, so let's talk about teams. Manchester City, let's start with them. They're missing their goalkeeper, Edison. He can be a little bit dodgy. as much as he's got the reputation as being one of the best in the world, I'm probably in a small minority that does get a little bit anxious watching him play sometimes. Yes, I know he can pass a ball probably a lot better than most outfield players, which is an incredible skill as a goalkeeper in the modern game. But he's out, so they're down a player because he is a good shot stopper and he is good with his feet. So Ortega will be coming in. He played against us in the league when they won 3-2. He looked okay. We didn't really do much in the second half to test him, if I'm being totally honest with you. And Kevin De Bruyne looks like he's missing out. I think that's pretty much confirmed. That is a huge one. Huge. He is one of the best, most influential midfielders in world football. I'll happily take that one. But we cannot suddenly believe, because they don't have De Bruyne, the thing's all rosy in the garden on what we can do. Then you've got to look to Phil Foden, who's in the form of his life, and he's terrorised us previously in games. What side's he going to play on? Who's he going to come up against? Bernardo Silva can pull the strings. Rodri dictates matches. He's probably one of the best midfielders in the world right now. So they've got a couple of injuries, which is only good for us. A couple. Emphasis on a couple. Let's talk about our team. Now, defensively, does Botman rest for this one? That's a question which probably sounds like I'm proper playing the level field. I will leave that one down to Mr. Eddie Howe. He knows he's not an idiot. He knows Botman's performance on Monday wasn't good enough. Is he carrying a knock? We've just found out Sean Longstaff is, which I, as a fan, I'm not happy about. Apparently he's taking injections. He's playing through the pain because Miley doesn't want to play too much football. Bollocks. I said, yes, in an ideal world, Miley's playing a little bit too much. But if we are playing a midfielder who is knackered, injured, and having to stick injections in his foot every single time he plays, there has to be a correlation between that and how bad Sean Longstaff's been. Miley is chomping at the bit to be back in starting. He's had a little bit of a rest. Take Longstaff out, because we are not seeing the same energy. We are not seeing any impact or input in the final third, in my opinion. And generally speaking, he's just been pretty shite. Now we know it's an injury. Eddie Howe's finally decided to reveal that in his press conference. Probably protecting the player so we don't say and himself, because we would have criticised the manager for keeping him in. If he's injured, Eddie, we've got options now. Elliot Anderson is chomping at the bit. Elliot Anderson in a game like this, regardless of how rusty he might still be, could give us a real bit of grit. Nobody should underestimate how good he looked just before he got injured. But Longstaff, for me, if you're carrying a knock, son, sit it out. He's taken a massive battering from our fan base at the moment, and with performances in mind, probably rightly so. So those are the two ones where Eddie Howe's got a decision to make. But for me, Longstaff with Miley and Anderson chomping to be in that midfield, that's the one I think he needs to change up. Botman, Lascelles for me has not put too much of a foot wrong. Lascelles also has a bit of pace in his locker. I'm not going to say a huge amount of pace, but he has a bit of pace. We do not have any of that, and this Man City team has lots of it. Is there an argument for Jamal Lascelles to come in? I remember Lascelles played against Man City last season after we just lost the cup final. He kept Haaland quiet. We lost 2-0, but he looked pretty decent when he was drafted back in. And he's our captain. And don't forget, that leadership with Trippier off the pitch, I think was lacking on Monday. We had no... Dan Burn, you can maybe argue, was the Geordie at the back. He seems quite a vocal character, but you miss it. And Lascelles, for all his critics out there, yes, he's not top-level defender. He probably brings that to the team. So that's maybe a decision for Eddie. Now, Livramento, fantastic, son. Just keep doing what you're doing. He can really offer us something in this match. You would assume he's going to go right back. You would assume Dan Burn is going to be left back. Because Dan Burn, I don't think his injury was serious. I didn't quite get that one in the press conference from Eddie, but I don't think it is. So there's your midfield picks itself. I've said I want Longstaff out, but Willock didn't influence as much. But in a match like this, when you are driving the ball up the field, which is so important at the Etihad, because we're going to be under the cosh, we have to accept that. Anthony Gordon, we think he's going to be okay to play this one. Congratulations on your England call-up. The most deserved England call-up in the history of England call-ups. He's gone from 0 at Everton, getting chased by his own fans, to, double figures goals, assists, absolutely playing out of his skin. I cannot wait to see him hopefully get some minutes in them friendlies. Bruno versus Gordon. Brazil-England, Interesting. Right side for me, Jacob Murphy, Almiron. People say he played well when he came on against Chelsea. In my opinion, he didn't. Almiron, Murphy's stats are better than Almiron's this season, and Murphy's played so little football in comparison. You can't always divulge stats, but Almiron's, for an attacking footballer, I'm sorry, Newcastle fans, are absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. You want a £20 million right or left winger to have assists, goals. He's just not a good footballer. So Murphy, I'm not saying he's going to pull trees up, but we saw his goal on Monday, wow, and he put in a couple of tasty balls, and that's going to be important in a match like this as well. Of course, Alexander Isak's important here. He offers us the massive quality, and we need, on that topic, we need Bruno to be pulling the strings. Sorry, I'm up for this match. I really want to see the boys put on a show, give us something which they didn't on Monday. But the more I talk about it, the more I suddenly think, come on, we can do it, we can do it. It's amazing how football gets a hold of your emotions. It's crazy. I started this video, let's talk about Man City now. I'm like, come on! Yeah, we need Bruno to have a good game. And all I'm asking for, when that full-time whistle goes, if we lose, which is obviously expected, that's our last chance of a trophy, which is gutting that we even got this draw, was so frustrating. Just to at least get to Wembley would have given us something to finish this season with. Just a performance, just effort. And I haven't said that for a while, that the minimum I want to see is effort. And the fact I'm saying that is concerning, so I do not want to see that 2 matches in a row. The Eddie Howe talk is ridiculous in my opinion, to the levels it's at. I watched a podcast just 2 nights ago, and it was an hour and 30 minutes whilst I was working, of the most negative talk I could imagine. And yes, we've lost a football match. Yes, we haven't played very well. But I felt like I'd gone in a time machine to 3 years ago. We are going to be okay. And I know that sounds the most general statement to make. If a European place is going to be 8th, if an FA Cup winner gets, is in the Champions League, hopefully it's us, so there isn't a Champions League FA Cup winner. But realistically, if a Man City or a Liverpool wins, Man City or Liverpool win the FA Cup, 8th could be Europe. I still think we can sneak Europe if I look at our matches. Monday was out of character. We've conceded too many goals this season, which is worrying. But there's just been so much to contend with, and I still think we're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. And I don't like as much negativity as there's been. I think it's madness. I think I can't get my head round some of these little pockets of fans and where they pop up from with some really, really opinionated, just... I don't know. I'm not in that camp at all. I was infuriated on Monday, and if you don't believe us, I've done a video on it. But Newcastle fans, before I finish this video, of course, it's time. And they're not going to be that positive. They're getting some black and white banter. Stats! 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 I'll get the negatives. Do you want the good news or the bad news? I'll get the bad ones out the way first. Newcastle have lost 15 of their last 16 visits to the Etihad. It makes you wonder why we're selling out 7,000 tickets to it. That's just how great our support is. Off the record, that includes losing our last 9. I'm not going to tell you how many goals were scored in that time, because that is also awful reading. It's going to be a tough one. Here's the more positive. No team has knocked Manchester City out of both domestic cups in one season since Tottenham in 92-93. Carabao, tick. FA Cup, maybe. And to finish on a positive, we have not played an away cup tie at the Etihad for a very long time, 2014. And do you know what the score was that day? I've already told you earlier in this video. 2-0 to Newcastle. But my quiz question for you, anyone who's watched this long, probably not many of you, who played in central midfield for Newcastle that day? Rolando, Aarons and Sissoko were the scorers, but which player would you not expect to be sitting in that midfield who did a pretty decent job? Let me know in the comments. Right, that's the stats out the way. How do I see this one going? I mean, am I really going to jump on this video and say that I think Newcastle can go down to the Etihad and get anything? You bet your left testicle I'm going to say Newcastle can go down the Etihad and get something. I'm going to go for some sort of mad draw. Bit like last season's when it was 3-3. Don't know why. Have no idea why. It's going to go to extra time, and we might lose it in extra time / penalties, but I think we can push them in normal time to a draw. Am I expecting to ring me ma to tell her I won't be home for tea? No. But will I still be going down there in some sort of hope? Of course, because that's what football fans do, and you never know in football. Newcastle United fans watching this. That's what I'm signing off on. Let me know your predictions in the comments. What team would you play? And for the 7,000 to 8,000 fans going down in the Etihad, I'll see you there. Away the lads!